Well, viewers, welcome back to the South by Southwest Bicycle Channel. I've been working on this quadricycle for about 6-7 months now. It's been completely torn down to the bone and totally resurrected from the bottom up. It's been completely rebuilt, and I did some preliminary numbers for the distance on the electrical system for how far I can go, and I have two numbers for you. One is with throttle only, I'm getting about 0.67 volts per mile. If I do pedal assist, this bike doesn't have pedal assist, but you can mimic the pedal assist with the throttle. And if I use the pedal assist with using the throttle, I'm getting about 0.25 volts per mile. So using a 46 volt cutoff, I'm projecting 15 miles with throttle only and 20 miles if you're using pedal assist. Now that's not much, but keep in mind this bike weighs twice as much as a regular bike. It weighs about 130 pounds. That's with the motor and everything that's in it. Excuse me. So how do we increase the mileage? Simple. We change that 48 volt out to a 52 volt or a 62 volt battery system. Now I have to get in touch with WPH Moto to find out what's the maximum volts I can go with that speed controller, but I'm pretty sure 52 volts would be acceptable. 62 volts might be questionable, but I'm gonna send them shoot them an email and see what they tell me. So that's where we're kind of at on that. Although, like I said, I'm very pleased with the 15 miles. I don't have a problem with that because my town's only like 8 miles long and 5 miles across. Anything beyond that, you're going to be on a 2-lane highway in the middle of nowhere. So it's acceptable for the kind of riding I do. This bike is basically a cruiser bike. That's all it is. It's meant for cruising. And I like it. It's a lot of fun to ride. A lot of fun. I enjoy it very much. Well, viewers, this is the Canopy I bought for my bike. I bought it a few years back in 2015. It's gone up in price because when I bought it was $51, now it's $68. But if you notice, it's made for this recumbent seat that I have on my bike. And if you notice, the front poles are only 1/8 inch thick poles, and eventually they broke right up here. Eventually they broke from the wiggling. So I had to modify it a little bit, and I did that. And now I'm going to show you some other modifications I'm going to have to do, because the headset brackets they give you to go on the bike down below to mount the front the front poles are only plastic. So when I solved this problem with the curvature, then I had the problem of the headsets breaking. So I'm going to show you what I did to fix that problem. This is the Canopy. Back when I got it, back in 2015, I took some orange marker and tried to paint up the bicycle thing on there, and it was a bad idea because it's running everywhere. So we got some water with some alcohol, and Dawn detergent or dish soap, and we also have this carpet and upholstery shampooer, and a little bit of lighter fluid if we need it. So we're gonna get this all cleaned up. The other thing is I had to modify the front of this because the original tubes came, the original poles came straight out. They were only 1/8 inch fiberglass poles, and they have a real heavy bend in it, and they broke right where they go into the metal bracket here. So I modified it. I put these blocks, these are 1.5 inch wood blocks, and I sanded them down or into a taper, drilled my holes, and it's on there real good. I added an extra 1/4 inch pole here, fiberglass pole, so it has 2 poles in the front, so it gives it a lot of stability. And I added a 1/4 inch pole, down poles, to go onto the console bar, which mount right here. Now the only problem I had was the headsets they give you to attach this part of the pole to your handlebars, or in my case the console bar, they were breaking because they're only made of plastic. So I'm using these limit trails water bottle holders. These are made of aluminum, and I use these quite a bit for a lot of different other things. And basically what it is, it mounted onto here. This pole's way too short, so we're going to be pulling these poles out. I got some more fiberglass poles here. We'll be cutting those and painting them up, and we're going to make this longer, and we're going to put, because if you see that, how that attaches, well, we want to put 3 adjustment holes on it so we can accommodate taller drivers. So when we move the seat back, this, we can loosen this up, this will rotate, and then we can put it on a higher link. So I'll probably put 3 different holes or 4 different holes, so we'll just make them longer. So that's the modification we're going to be doing. It looks like I made this worse than better, so I think I'm just going to leave it alone. This is a cover I bought from Joann's. It's kind of like a canvas with a bicycle on it. I think each panel was $16 a panel, and it's glued on. And if I try to take it off, I'll end up ripping the vinyl on the bottom. So we're going to leave it. So it is what it is. Meanwhile, I got the front poles off. These are off. I may just use these front poles because once I make them longer, you know, make up the new brackets. So the next step is to take these apart and figure out how we're going to make up the new brackets and how we're going to attach this to it, and then put in our 4 holes. I decided to put 4 adjustment holes on it. So that would be next. I went ahead and cut this angle. It's a 1/2 inch aluminum angle. I cut them to 6.5 inches. I drilled the holes and mounted it. This is one of them. This is Lumitrail bicycle cage mounts. I recommend that you buy some of these, keep these handy, because you never know when you want to mount something on your bike, and they come in handy. You can mount just about anything you can imagine using these, and they're not plastic, and that's what's nice about them. So I had 2 choices. I could have mounted on this side, so it would expose everything, the rod coming down. I didn't like that idea. I'd rather have mounted it this way, so that way the front and sides and the pole, you won't see it. It'll look neater that way, nicer, but it takes a little extra work because I'm going to have to remove all that material there that's blacked out, so it'll fit over the pole. The whole idea here is once we get these mounted, This is your front pole, and we're going to put holes on here. So what that'll allow us to move the pole longer to accommodate taller riders. Now this seat is pretty much all the way up, maybe about a ½ inch from being fully all the way up, because I am a short rider. So that's where we're going to set our first hole. Once we get this all ready, we'll put the canopy on it and figure out where our first hole is going to be on the side here. And then once we get that first hole, then we can gauge how many holes we could put and how far apart. I like to get 4, but 3 would be, I think, would be okay too. Well, viewers, my next dilemma was, because I don't have a mill, and I used to have those circular saws that you put on your drill to drill holes, and I can't find them. I went through all 3 of my rollaways, I can't find them, so I must have sold them. So I had to do it the old-fashioned way. So I had to figure out how I was going to hold this so I could see the shadows, so I could drill the holes and then file it. I'll kind of show you the other side here. So I drilled 3 holes, and I just used a hacksaw and cut through the holes. Now I'm just going to file it out like I did this side. So that's all done. So my problem was, if I bolted these together so I have some way of holding this so I could file it. Other than that, I'd have to file it like this, and I wouldn't be able to see my shadow, my lines where I need to be. So bolting them together did the trick. So we just need to file this out and put on our Limit Trail bar mounts and mount this on the console bar and see what kind of clearances we have. Well, viewers, we got this all on. You can see the clearance looks real good. Let me tighten up on that. The clearance looks real good around there. And our canopy poles, we'll drill the holes along the side here for adjustments for the front poles. And eventually we'll shape these a little bit, give them a little bit of style on the bottom tops. Now these will probably be angled back a little bit more because I'm a little concerned about knee clearance, but I think this is fine because I don't have a problem with this. It's about the same. But one way to find out is hop in the bike and pedal it backwards and see what we got. Oh yeah, there's plenty of room. Let me widen this out. There's plenty of room there. Knowing that I'm not sure exactly where these need to be. They may need to come out to about here, but they're fairly close. Because I know it wasn't that close to the handlebar or that close to the steering wheel. I think they're probably come out about here somewheres. But that's it. We got ourselves some really good solid head mounts for the poles. No more stinking plastic. So the next step is to go ahead and fit on the canopy, mount it to the back, and figure out where our holes need to be for the position the seat's in. And then we'll figure out our hole, we'll drill it, we'll do the same thing on the other side, and then we can figure out how many holes we want to put up and how far. Because I may end up cutting this down a little bit. It's a little bit long, but I was just kind of guessing where it should be. It doesn't interfere with the steering wheel, so we're good there. I'm just not sure where those poles need to be. So next thing to do is fit on the canopy and figure out where our front poles need to be. We got the front poles kind of sit where it want it to be. I used little C-clamps on the sides to hold it in place. We got the back poles all mounted. Now I just want to point out, when you get the kit, they're going to tell you to mount them on these plastic mounts right on this bottom bar and have it come out on the outside. Bad idea. Mount them through this away, and on the back of your seat, back of the seat, there's
2 screws on each side. These are for water bottle mounts. If you want to put a water bottle mount on your on the back of your seat. So I use these screws, and what I did is I just drilled the bushings out to a bigger hole so I could run this in, and that works real well. I haven't had any problems with the back, and it's pretty solid. Meanwhile, we got this all kind of clamped in. We got the chop look on it that we want. It looks even in the front, straight. So all I need to do now is I need to steady the camera first of all. You see that hole in that bushing? I just need to locate that hole and drill the hole. And how I'm going to do that, I'm just going to measure it and see where that is and drill it and drill the other one to match. Well, we got the canopy all finished up. It's all mounted. It's all ready to go for a test ride. I'm not going to bore you with all the painting and stuff we're going to be doing to it. But right now what we want to do is take it out for a ride, see how it holds up to the vigorous. And also I want to see if there's any difference in the mileage. But basically it's finished. And just to give you an idea, we got plenty of room for the steering wheel, so I was right, it does go over a lot more. And when I wiggle the top, the whole bike wants to wiggle, so that's good. We want some wiggling, but we don't want it flopping from one side to the other like it was when I originally put it on. The wiggling in it was horrible. I mean, it'd come over 3 or 4 inches on each side. So now it's probably less than a 2 or 3 inches at the most. So looks good. We don't have any more of that plastic mount there. We don't have this problem anymore. I think it's going to hold up just fine. So the only thing that's left, like I said, is take it for a test ride, see how it holds up, and also see if there's any difference in the mileage. Now let's see how this canopy holds up. Pretty good. The sidewalk abuse going up and down the driveways is the worst. The sidewalk abuse. You see it wiggles a little bit, but it's not wiggling that bad. It's this kind of stuff that makes it wiggle. Now I'm doing throttle only, I'm not really pedaling. Now the Mimic pedal assist, I would be pedaling like this and just barely giving just a little bit of feed in on the throttle. So if I stop pedaling, it's gonna go about 6 miles an hour. Oh. The camera's hitting up on top of the canopy. open it up now. 21, 22, 24, 25. Okay, there is a difference on the top speed. Usually top speed is 26, 27. I get now it's 25. So it acts like a little bit of a parachute. So that probably tells me I'm going to get less miles per volt. Well, viewers, there you have it. The canopy is all fixed. We're not going to have any more problems with coming apart. And it's sturdy, it works well. We did find out at higher speeds the aerodynamics on it does slow down the bike. I don't believe it's so much the weight as it is the aero on it, because it just kind of scoops up that wind. Even though I put a little bit of pitch on it, it still scoops up that wind and slows it down a little bit. And I also notice at speeds around 24 up to 25, the front end tends to, it feels like it lightens up a little bit, because I think the wind's kind of picking it up a little bit. But it's no big deal. Even with your Mimic, the pedal assist at lower speeds, I don't think it's really going to interfere with your distance. So I'm fixing to take this off now. We're going to shape up these brackets a little bit, make them look a little bit nicer, and we're going to paint them. But I'm going to hold off because I need to paint up the light bar here. We want to extend that up a little bit higher, so we're going to change these extension bars up higher. So that's something we'll be doing. And we're going to put a back bumper on it for the light bar for the tail lights in the back. And so I guess the next step here is to lay out all the parts for the lighting system, and so I can show you all those. They're all lightweight. It's all lightweight LED stuff. It's all for motorcycles, and it runs off an independent battery. I'm not running it on the 48 volt, although I do have a step down converter for it, voltage regulator for it. Step it down from 48 volt to a 12 volt. I'm not going to use it because I don't want to be using any voltage from the main battery. If it was a lighter bike, yes, you could probably do that and get away with it. But in this case, I'd just rather run a independent battery I have for it, and I'll show that to you once I lay all the parts out. But as far as I'm concerned, the canopy is finished, so we'll take that off and hang it up because we really don't need it, because fall's here and winter's coming, and I don't ride it in the rain, so I don't really need the canopy. The only time I really probably use the canopy is during springtime, when it starts to get a little bit warm. But it's still, you know, you can still ride during the day. When summer comes, I'll probably take it off because I don't ride during the day. It's just too dang hot. I wouldn't ride this bike in temperatures above 95 degrees. It's not good on the motor. You'll overheat that motor and you'll probably burn it out. So probably a good idea to ride this bike in temperatures below 95 degrees. My Rad Rover is rated at 105, but keep in mind it's a much lighter bike than this. So we're going to wrap this part of the canopy up, call it good, and we're going to lay out all the parts for the legal street lighting system, and show you what's all involved in that. Well, viewers, these are all the parts that are involved in the street legal lighting. I'm just going to kind of pan across so you can get an idea. Not much, but a few parts. Let's talk about these two big parts that are right here. This is going to be our bumper. and it's aluminum L. It's a 2-inch wide, and it's only a 1/16 inch thick, so it's not going to be that heavy. And we're going to be cutting that. It's going to go from here to about here, so we're going to cut off that much. That's going to be our back bumper on the back, so we can put on these lights here, these 3 tail lights on it. So I'll explain more of these in detail, so we know what this is for, so we'll get that out of the way. This is an old bumper I found on the road. I ran over it. It was much bigger than this before. I almost fell and broke my neck. I was on my Rad Rover. In event, I drug it home. My wife goes, "You better not start hoarding stuff." You know, and I said, well, I'm not hoarding it. I'm going to probably use it someday. And I've been using it up little by little. So what I use this for, basically, is for my console bar and also for my terminal block holders. This stuff, you can heat it up, bend it, and once it cools off, it retains that shape. So we'll be using that and using this. So let's get this out of the way. Okay, viewers, the next thing we're going to talk about is the power source. This is the voltage regulator that I bought, but I wasn't sure if I was going to use it because I didn't know what kind of mileage I was going to be getting out of the bike, and I'm not really getting the mileage I wanted. So we're going to disregard using this, because this is what you'd hook up to your main battery, step it down from 48 to a 12 volt so you can run all these other lights. So we decided that's out. This is a motorcycle battery with a bullet case to hold it, to mount it. This weighs, I'd probably say about 8 pounds. It's a 12 cell 18 650 battery cells. There's 12 of them in there. And I did a run test, a bench test this. I did a run test and I did 3 hours, and I put the charger on it and timed the charger, and it only took less than half an hour for it to recharge. So that tells me we use very little capacity out of this battery to run the LED lights. So this is highly acceptable. This will work perfect. And it has an inline fuse already on it. And that's the case to mount it with. The next thing we're going to need is we're going to need a power switch. This is the power switch to turn on the system. That will be on one of the console bars. Now I have some choices here on the front headlights. These are about a half a pound heavier than these are. The difference between this one and this one has a chip in it. So when you turn it off and turn it back on, it goes from high to low beam. You turn it off, turn it back on, it goes to flash. I'm not going to use these because these are heavier. So we're going to eliminate this, but we are going to use these. Now these only have high beam only. So when you turn them on, they go on high beam, which is acceptable. So I'm going to be using these instead because they're lighter in weight, and we're going to eliminate those. The other thing we have here is a motorcycle switch. This will turn your lights on and off, your blinker for left and right, and a button here for the horn. These and this, clear some of this out of the way here. These are the LED lights that go back on the back bumper. These have chips in it. So if you notice, should be 4 or 5 leads here. Let's see, 2, 3, 4, yeah, there's 5 leads. Okay, one is for ground. Another one is for your tail light. The other one is for your brake light. The other one's for your blinker left and blinker right. So it has a built-in chip, so we don't need to run these through any type of a relay, a flasher relay. These have built-in chips to them, so that'll help a little bit. And this is the brake switch that we need to hook up to the brake. So when we apply the brake, put that through the plunger here. Oh, come on, get in there. So when we apply the brake, it pulls that plunger out and gives it continuity and turns on the brake light. So that's what that is all about. Moving on down the line. These are going to be my front amber. These are amber LEDs. They're 4-inch long. These are going to be for my blinkers. And unfortunately, if you notice on these, they only have 2 wires. They don't have a built-in chip. So I'm going to have to run them through these blinker relays, and you need 2 of them. One for left, one for right. Now if you use a rear, you need to use a rear blinker, you just double up on the wires going out to the light, because what it says on here, L and B and L. So that goes to the light or to the lamp. This comes from the blinker from the switch, and that will make these blink. Plus the fact you have a little pot there, you can adjust how fast these blink. You can make them blink slow or real fast, so it has an adjustment on it, so it's kind of cool. We're also going to be running a, these are amber lights. We're going to run these underneath as parking lights, and that's going to be on an independent switch. Or I may just run it right to the light switch on the motorcycle switch. But I like to be able to just turn these on by themselves without the lights. So in that case, I would need to run a switch, which is no big deal. We could do that. The other thing we're going to need is a horn. This is a motorcycle horn. It's rated at 115 decibels. Now when you hook this up, you got to make sure when you mount it as tight and as solid as possible. If this thing's not mounted very good, it's not going to work well. It puts out a lot of vibration. And that gets hooked up to the switch for the horn. And then last but not least, you're going to need some permo blocks. Now, you see how I got this? When I hook up like my hotline to this, this will provide a hotline for all these. Now I can cut this off and only use 3 of the leads, and maybe use the other 2 leads for a ground. Just cut it off. So I have 2 of those, so that should be more than enough. That's pretty much it for the components. Now what we need to do is start figuring out how and where to mount them. The first thing you want to do is you want to get everything mounted and make sure that they're in the place you want them to be, because the last thing you want to do is when you be in the middle of wiring and decide, oh, you know what, maybe I think I need to put this over here instead of there. And what's going to happen is you're going to have to take the wiring apart, redo it, and you have more of a chance of making a mistake, because remember, this is direct current. So if you get the currents reversed, you're going to have problems. You're going to be blowing fuses or burning things up. So one word of caution is just make sure you get everything mounted in place first, then do your wiring. It's much easier to do it that way. So that's what we'll be doing. We already mounted our front light bar, but we want to raise that up. I need to get the proper stock for it to raise it up with, but we can move on mounting the battery. We already got the headlights taken care of. We can move on with the rear bumper and get our tail lights mounted, get our brake light mounted, and get our horn mounted. We can mount this, and then we can start figuring out our console bar for our switches and our terminal block, where we want to mount those on the terminal block. So that's how we're going to approach this. Well, viewers, it looks like we're run out of time. In fact, we're running into a little bit of overtime. If you're a subscriber and you haven't pushed that notification bell, you probably want to do that so you can keep up with this project. If you're a first-time viewer and you like what you see, you'll probably want to subscribe and mash that notification bell as well. If you have any comments, suggestions, ideas, criticism, make sure you use that comment section down below. I'll be more than happy to look at those and answer each and every one of them. In the meantime, like I always say, if I can do it, you can do it better.